I knew something was off the second I stepped off the elevator, and the front desk associate wouldn't meet my eyes. Marcus had worked that lobby for 6 years. Every single morning, every morning he'd look up, give me that small nod, the one that said you belong here. That Thursday, he was suddenly very interested in his monitor. Head down, shoulders tight. The kind of stillness a person holds when they know something you don't. I kept walking. My name is Victoria Calloway. I'm 38 years old. At the time, I was Senior Vice President of Revenue Operations at Meridian Strategies, a $2.3 billion consulting firm where I had spent 11 years building something from nothing. I joined as an analyst. I built the entire revenue infrastructure they still use today. 3 departments, 46 direct reports. I was 11 years in, and I was 4 weeks away from the largest performance bonus in the company's history. 4 weeks. The number was $4 million, fully earned, contractually guaranteed. 11 years of 70-hour weeks, canceled vacations, and a marriage that almost didn't survive my ambition, all of it crystallized into a single vesting date, April 15th. I hadn't even set my laptop bag down when the Outlook ping hit my phone. Urgent, performance review 9:15 a.m., conf RM4C. No body, no signature. Subject line in all caps, like someone had typed it in a panic and hit send before they could talk themselves out of it. Cute. I stood at my desk for exactly 4 seconds. I looked at the notification. I looked at the date, March 18th. I did the math I already knew by heart, 28 days before vesting. Then I opened my bottom desk drawer, the one with the lock, reached past the emergency granola bars and the bottle of Advil, and I pulled out a folder. Inside that folder was a copy of my employment contract, specifically page 14, paragraph 3, section 11C. I had read that clause so many times over the last year that I could recite it from memory, not because I was paranoid. Because 6 months earlier, my boss, Karen Whitfield, Chief Operating Officer, had looked me in the eye during my annual review and said something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand straight up. Victoria, leadership wants to make sure we're all aligned going into Q2. That's corporate for, something is coming and it isn't a promotion. I put the folder in my bag, closed the drawer, straightened my blazer in the reflection of my dark monitor screen. Then I walked toward conference room 4C. They thought they were calling me in to end something. They had no idea they were walking into the beginning of it. I knew something was off the second I stepped off the elevator, and Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. 6 years that man had worked the front desk. 6 years of the same small nod every morning. That Thursday, nothing. Head down, shoulders tight. The kind of stillness a person holds when they know something you don't. I kept walking. My name is Victoria Calloway. I'm 38 years old. SVP of Revenue Operations at Meridian Strategies, $2.3 billion firm, 11 years of my life poured into its walls, 3 departments built from scratch, 46 direct reports, and 1 date circled in my mind like a heartbeat. April 15th, 28 days away, the day my $4 million performance bonus vested. I hadn't even set my bag down when the Outlook ping hit my phone. Urgent, performance review 9:15 a.m., CONF RM4C. No body, no signature, all caps, sent like someone needed to do it before they lost their nerve. Cute. I opened my bottom desk drawer, the locked one, and pulled out a folder. Page 14, paragraph 3, section 11C of my employment contract. I'd read it so many times I could recite it cold. I put the folder in my bag. They thought they were calling me in to end something. They had absolutely no idea they were about to start it. If you've ever watched someone underestimate you so badly, it actually worked in your favor, hit like and subscribe. This one's for everyone who ever got handed a grenade and turned it into a blueprint. Stay with me. It's about to get very, very good. Conference room 4C smelled like fresh coffee and bad intentions. Karen Whitfield was already seated when I walked in. COO, 11-year veteran of the firm, same as me, except Karen had spent most of those 11 years taking credit for rooms she never built. Beside her sat Derek Holt, head of HR, legal pad, uncapped pen, the posture of a man who had done this before and learned to make his face say nothing. There was no coffee poured for me. I sat down anyway, set my bag on the floor, folded my hands on the table. Karen opened a manila folder. She didn't look up immediately, a power move she'd picked up somewhere and deployed constantly, as if the pause itself was supposed to loosen something in me. It didn't. When she finally looked up, her expression was the careful kind. Practiced, the face of someone who had rehearsed this in a mirror. Victoria, we've completed a comprehensive performance evaluation across senior leadership. After a thorough review, the company has made the decision to eliminate your position, effective immediately. She slid a single sheet of paper across the table. Separation agreement, pre-signed on their end, a line waiting for mine. Derek cleared his throat. We want to make this transition as smooth as possible. There's a severance package outlined on page 2. We ask that you. What specifically triggered the performance evaluation? I asked. Karen blinked just once. It was a comprehensive. Right, you said that. I looked at the paper without touching it. And the timing, March 18th. Can you walk me through the decision on timing? A half-second of silence, the kind that has weight. These decisions are made at the leadership level, Victoria. The timing reflects. 28 days before my bonus vests, I said, quiet, even, the same voice I used to deliver board presentations. I just want to make sure that's noted in whatever documentation exists around this conversation. Derek's pen stopped moving. Karen's jaw didn't move, but something behind her eyes did. A flicker, there and gone. She tapped the separation agreement once with one finger. We'd like a signature by end of business Friday. I picked up the paper, looked at it the way you look at something you already knew was coming. Then I folded it in half, slid it into my bag, right next to the folder with page 14, paragraph 3, section 11C. I stood up, smoothed my blazer. I'll have my attorney review it, I said. Have a good morning. I walked out of conference room 4C at 9:31 a.m. 11 years. 46 people, $4 million on the line. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely calm. Because they had just made the last mistake they would ever make at my expense. I didn't go back to my desk right away. I took the long route, down the east corridor. Past the glass-walled conference rooms, past the strategy wall where my revenue framework was still printed and mounted in a brushed steel frame, Meridian Growth Architecture, Q3 2019, my name nowhere on it. I had noticed that the day they hung it, I hadn't said a word. I noticed it again now. I took the elevator to the parking garage, sat in my car, and opened the folder. Page 14, paragraph 3, section 11C. In the event that an employee holding a senior vice president title, or above, is terminated without documented cause within 90 days of a scheduled bonus vesting date, the company shall remain liable for the full bonus amount as outlined in the original compensation agreement. Termination without documented cause shall trigger mandatory arbitration at the company's expense, with all legal fees and arbitration costs borne by Meridian Strategies, LLC. I had found this clause 14 months ago. Not by accident. After Karen's comment during my annual review, leadership wants to make sure we're all aligned going into Q2. I went home that night, poured a glass of water, sat at my kitchen table, and read my employment contract from page 1 to page 37. Every paragraph, every footnote, every subordinate clause nested inside a subordinate clause. Most people sign contracts and file them. I had always known that was a mistake. What I found on page 14 stopped me cold, not because it was complicated, but because it was so clean, so unambiguous. Whoever had drafted this contract had built a trapdoor directly beneath the company's feet, and 11 years later, Karen Whitfield had just stepped directly onto it in her best heels. The clause had 3 triggers. I met all 3. SVP title or above, check. Terminated without documented cause, check. Because there was no documented cause. There couldn't be. My last 3 performance reviews were rated exceeds expectations in every category, signed by Karen herself. Within 90 days of vesting, check. 28 days to be exact. I pulled out my phone and called one number. Diane Osei, my attorney. The kind of woman who answers on the second ring and says nothing until she has something worth saying. They did it, I said. A pause then. When? This morning, 9:15. No documented cause, 28 days out. Another pause, shorter this time. Send me the separation agreement and the contract tonight, both full documents. Already pulling them up. Victoria, her voice shifted just slightly, the way it does when she already knows the outcome. They just handed you everything. I looked through my windshield at the parking garage wall. Gray concrete, fluorescent light humming overhead. 11 years reduced to a folder in my lap and a separation agreement they expected me to sign by Friday. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Diane called me back at 7:43 that evening. I was at my kitchen table. Same spot where I'd first found section 11C 14 months ago. Glass of water. Contract open. The separation agreement beside it, still unsigned, still folded on the crease I'd put in it inside conference room 4C. I've read everything, she said, twice. And Karen Whitfield just made a $4 million mistake. I exhaled slowly, not relief, confirmation. There's a difference. Diane walked me through it with the precision of someone dismantling a clock. The clause was airtight. No documented cause meant no defense. The arbitration trigger was automatic. Meridian couldn't opt out, couldn't delay, couldn't negotiate around it without my written consent. Every legal fee, every arbitration cost, landed on their balance sheet the moment they handed me that separation agreement. But the clause alone wasn't enough. We needed a case built around it. Clean, layered, irrefutable. I need 3 things from you, Diane said. Every performance review, every written commendation, and every email where Karen or anyone in senior leadership praised your work in writing. I almost smiled. How many do you need? All of them. I spent the next 4 days building a file that would have made my analyst self proud. 11 years of documentation, organized chronologically, tagged by relevance. 3 annual reviews, all exceeds expectations. 14 written commendations from board members, clients, and divisional leads. 47 emails from Karen alone. Karen congratulating me on Q3 results. Karen forwarding my revenue projections to the CEO with brilliant work in the subject line. Karen copying me on a client proposal with a note that read, Victoria built this model. She's the reason we won this account. 47 emails, signed, time-stamped, irrefutable. I also pulled something else, something Diane hadn't asked for but needed to see. 3 weeks before my firing, an internal memo had circulated through senior leadership about Q2 budget reallocations. I had been copied, routine. But buried in paragraph 4 was a line about restructuring bonus liability ahead of the April cycle. I had flagged it at the time as odd phrasing. Now it read like a confession. I forwarded it to Diane at 11:15 p.m. with a single line. Page 2, paragraph 4. Her response came back in 6 minutes. Victoria, this changes the arbitration posture entirely. This isn't just wrongful termination. This is premeditated. I closed my laptop and sat in the quiet of my kitchen for a long moment. They hadn't just fired me carelessly. They had planned it, mapped it out, calculated the risk, weighed it against $4 million, and decided I wouldn't fight back hard enough to matter. 11 years of watching me work, and they still didn't know who I was. That was their final mistake. I heard about the panic secondhand. That's the thing about 11 years in one building. You accumulate people who are loyal not to the company, but to you. People who remember who stayed late during the Hargrove account collapse, who remembers who fought for their raises in rooms they were never invited into, who showed up with coffee and a strategy when everything was falling apart. Those people talk. Marcus from the front desk texted me first, Tuesday morning, 4 days after the firing. Something happening up here. Karen's been in and out of legal since yesterday. Derek looks like he hasn't slept. Then Priya, my former executive assistant, 16 months on my team, sharpest person in any room she entered, called me Wednesday evening. Victoria, I don't know what you did, but HR had an emergency meeting this morning and Karen came out looking like she'd seen something she couldn't unsee. I didn't do anything yet, I said. A pause. Oh. What had happened? What I pieced together later from Diane and from the people inside those walls was this. The morning after Diane filed the arbitration trigger notice, Meridian's general counsel, a careful, methodical man named Robert Fitch, received a document package. Inside was a cover letter from Diane's firm. A copy of Section 11C with the relevant language highlighted in clean yellow, a copy of the internal memo about restructuring bonus liability ahead of the April cycle, and a detailed index of 47 written commendations, 14 of them from Karen Whitfield personally. Robert Fitch read it, walked directly to Karen's office, and closed the door. That meeting lasted 2 hours and 19 minutes. By noon, outside counsel had been contacted. By 2 p.m., Derek from HR was pulling every file with my name on it. By 4 p.m., Karen had canceled all her remaining meetings for the day, something she had not done in 3 years. Priya said she passed Karen in the hallway late that afternoon. She looked straight through me, Priya told me, like she was doing math in her head and kept getting the wrong answer. The separation agreement deadline was Friday. They had built that timeline assuming I would sign quietly, take the severance, and disappear, the way people do when they're blindsided, when they're afraid, when they don't have a folder in a locked drawer they've been quietly maintaining for 14 months. Friday came. I didn't sign. I didn't call, didn't email, didn't send a counter-proposal. Diane had advised silence, and I had followed it perfectly. Let the arbitration notice sit on Robert Fitch's desk like a stone. Let the memo breathe. Let Karen do the math over and over again in that hallway until the numbers stopped changing. Because the numbers were never going to change. She owed me $4 million, and now the whole company knew it. If you've ever been the most prepared person in the room while everyone underestimated you, drop a raised fist in the comments. And if you already know Karen is not going to survive what's coming next, type clause, because we're just getting started. The arbitration hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday. It never made it to Tuesday. On the Friday before, exactly 3 weeks after they handed me that separation agreement, Diane received a call from Robert Fitch. Not from Karen, not from Derek, from the general counsel himself, which told me everything I needed to know about how far up the building this had traveled. They want a board-level meeting, Diane told me. Monday, 10 a.m. full leadership present. Who requested it? The board chair. Apparently Robert showed them the memo. I picked out my clothes that Sunday night the way I used to before closing a major client. Charcoal blazer, white shirt. The kind of outfit that says, I am not here to argue, I am here to finish this. The boardroom was on the 14th floor. Corner room, full glass, a view of the city that I had earned the right to see every day for 11 years. I had presented in this room 23 times. I had never once walked in feeling like the underdog. I didn't feel like one now either. 7 board members were seated when I arrived, Robert Fitch at the end. Karen to his left, rigid, composed, the careful face back in place. Derek beside her, legal pad open, pen cap already off. I sat directly across from Karen. Diane opened. Precise, methodical, no theater. She walked the board through Section 11C, the clause, the triggers, the liability. She presented the performance reviews, the 47 emails. She saved the memo for last, placing a printed copy in front of every board member simultaneously, paragraph 4 already highlighted. Restructuring bonus liability ahead of the April cycle, Diane read aloud. calm, clear, like she was reading a weather forecast. The room was very quiet. The board chair, a measured woman named Constance Webb, looked at the memo, then at Karen. Karen's mouth opened. That language was referring to broader compensation restructuring across. Karen, Constance's voice was not loud. It didn't need to be. Is your signature on Ms. Calloway's last 3 performance reviews? A beat, yes. And in each of those reviews, did you rate her performance as exceeds expectations? The pause that followed lasted 4 seconds. I counted. Yes. Constance set the memo down, folded her hands, looked at Robert Fitch. Something passed between them, the silent language of people who have just calculated a number and don't like what it adds up to. Robert turned to Diane. What does your client want? Diane looked at me. I had waited 3 weeks for this exact moment, 11 years for the version of it that lived underneath. I kept my voice level, my hands still, my eyes on Robert Fitch and nowhere else. Everything the contract says she's owed, not $1 less. Constance Webb wrote something on her notepad and underlined it twice. The meeting lasted 14 more minutes. Diane called me at 4:47 that same afternoon. I was home, kitchen table again. Same chair, same window, same gray March light coming through the glass. There was something deliberate about that, sitting in the same spot where I had first read section 11C, where I had built the file, where I had waited in the kind of silence that only makes sense when you know exactly what you're waiting for. Constance Webb wants to speak with you directly, Diane said. She asked for your number. Give it to her. Constance called at 5:12 p.m. No assistant patching her through. No hold music. Just her voice, direct and unvarnished, the way people speak when they've decided pretense is no longer useful. Ms. Calloway, I want to be straightforward with you. I'd appreciate that, I said. What happened was wrong. The memo was damaging, the timing was deliberate, and the board was not informed of the bonus liability before the termination decision was made. A pause. We were not informed of a lot of things, it turns out. I said nothing. Let that land exactly where it needed to. We'd like to resolve this cleanly and quickly. Full bonus, full contractual payout, a mutual separation agreement with no restrictions on your future employment. 11 years, 70-hour weeks, a marriage that almost didn't survive my ambition, a locked drawer, 14 months of quiet preparation. Have Robert send the paperwork to Diane by end of business tomorrow, I said. Done, Constance said. For what it's worth, you deserved better than what this company gave you. I looked out the window at the gray March sky. Yes, I said, I did. The paperwork arrived at Diane's office at 4:58 p.m. the following day. 2 minutes before end of business, Robert Fitch being precise about one thing at least. Diane reviewed it that evening and called me at 8:30 p.m. I could hear the particular quality of silence in her voice that meant she had read something satisfying. It's clean, she said. Everything Constance promised. Full $4 million bonus. Complete contractual payout. Mutual separation, no non-compete, no restrictions, no gag clause buried in the footnotes. And Karen. A pause, the comfortable kind. Karen is no longer listed as COO in the signatory block. I let that sit for a moment. Send it over. I signed at 9:17 p.m. at my kitchen table. No ceremony. No champagne. Just a pen, a document, and the quiet satisfaction of a woman who had built her own trapdoor long before anyone decided to push her through one. What I didn't do was gloat. I didn't call anyone at Meridian. Didn't forward the settlement to the people who'd watched me walk out of that building 3 weeks earlier carrying a box of 11 years. Didn't post anything. Didn't perform relief for an audience. That was never the point. The point was always the principle. That a contract means something. That preparation is its own form of power. That the most dangerous person in any room is not the loudest one. It's the one who read every page, highlighted every clause, and said nothing until the exact right moment. I closed the folder for the last time. locked the drawer out of habit. Then I made a cup of tea and went to bed early for the first time in 11 years. 6 months after the settlement, Karen Whitfield called me. Not through Diane, not through Robert Fitch or a mutual contact or a carefully worded email from an assistant. Directly. Her name on my screen, a Thursday afternoon, like the last 11 months hadn't happened. I let it ring twice, then I answered. She was starting her own consulting firm. Boutique, she said. Senior-level clients. High stakes. She needed someone who understood revenue architecture at a structural level, someone who could come in as a consultant, shape the foundation, and help her build something real. She needed me. I listened to the whole pitch without interrupting. When she finished, the line held a silence that I didn't rush to fill. Then I named my rate. Consultant, not employee. Project-based, not permanent. My terms, my timeline, my boundaries, in writing, signed before I touched a single piece of her business. She agreed to everything. I want to be clear about what that moment was, and what it was. It wasn't revenge. Revenge is loud and expensive, and it keeps you tethered to the people who hurt you. What that phone call was consequence. The natural, inevitable consequence of a woman who had underestimated another woman so completely that she'd handed her a $4 million legal victory, and then, 6 months later, needed to hire her anyway. I didn't burn the bridge. I simply walked away from it with the deed in my hand. Here is what 11 years and one locked drawer taught me. Your preparation is your power, not your title, not your tenure, not the relationships you think will protect you. The contract always outlasts the loyalty. Read every page. Highlight every clause. Ask the question nobody else thinks to ask. Because the people who are planning to move against you are counting on you being too trusting, too tired, or too grateful to look closely. Don't be. And when they come for you, and in this world, at some point, someone always comes, make sure you've been ready for longer than they've been planning. The most dangerous thing I ever did wasn't fighting back. It was staying quiet, staying prepared, and letting them believe I wasn't paying attention. I was always paying attention. If this story hit different, subscribe. More stories like this every week. And drop a comment right now. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who later needed you? Tell me below. If you know someone who needs to hear this today, share it with them. I'll see you in the next one.